All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today I want to do something slightly different. I've got a couple of really nice comments. I want to show you those. I want to go through one of those comments publicly because hopefully we will be able to get some value out of that. Then once we're done with that, I'm going to show you a little bit of stock market news and then of course do the charts for the full weekend deep dive TA. And I am officially at the point where I'm now looking for longs as of next week in the stock market. Bitcoin may or may not be a different beast. As I said, we'll get to the charts at the end and we'll sort all that out. For now though, I want to start off by pointing out a couple of things. So I'm not trying to single anyone out. In fact, I've redacted their name. But these sorts of comments, 9K is coming, okay? I mean, any comment is welcome on this channel. Any comment at all, because it helps the algo. So I appreciate anyone that comments. But this, of course, what am I supposed to say to this, right? I mean, how are we going to learn from one another? How are we going to get a debate going? How are we going to do anything other than just read this and go, oh, okay, bruh. So moving on, Leankin here has been going back and forth with me for some time now. And first of all, big love to Leankin. Big shout out. I hope I pronounced your name right. And this guy is actually very, very objective. He likes to push back a lot, and I like to be pushed back on, to be honest. It's nice to get some debate going. It's nice to take a look at some objectivity and discuss both sides rather than me just tell you everything is bullish and we're going to have a melt up and that's that. So far, the melt up, at least in the stocks, is going pretty well. Obviously, the Bitcoin price action of late is a different beast, as I've already said. But I wanted to go through this comment. Hopefully, you'll enjoy me going through this comment. I think I've got some really good points in response here. And Lincoln, I'll be looking forward to hearing your response as always, my brother. In the meantime, let's get into this comment. So finally, we had the big move. Now, for context for everyone that doesn't know what's been going on, I've been, of course, calling for this melt up, and Lean King has been one of the biggest doubters that we were going to see this big blow off top left translated cycle with an all-time high for Bitcoin this year. And rather than just say 9K is coming, he's actually had some good reasons for that. So we've been going back and forward, and I've had my lines in the sand. I said, look, if we can't break out this weekly cycle low, daily cycle low for Bitcoin, then things are likely going to get pretty ugly and I will have to scratch that idea off. You will have heard me say that a bunch of times on this channel if you've been here before. So finally, we've had the big move. Being as objective as possible, I think we can confirm, 1, Bitcoin is not yet a store of value, and how can it be if Musk or others can move the price? Well, let's dive into this a little bit. First of all, I do not believe Musk or others can really move the price, and at least if you think maybe they can, it's because the market cap is small, it's because it's still a nascent asset. As the asset increases in market cap over time, it will be less susceptible to volatility. In the time I've been trading Bitcoin, I've seen it come down from a 90 volt asset to a 70 volt asset. And of course, if we really are honest and we look at a Bitcoin chart, then for 5 months, we've traded in quite a very tight range, haven't we? For 5 months, we've really done nothing until this most recent dip. And this most recent crash, remember, was only a few $1,000s per Bitcoin. So not the end of the world. But like I said, I don't really believe people like Musk can actually move the Bitcoin price. Remember, every dip has its narrative. Whenever we see a dip, there's always someone to blame. Oh, well, Musk, SpaceX, they sold their Bitcoin. That's why this crash happened. Well, no, not really. And Z for Zcash here, shout out Z, he has pointed this out. We know for a fact, before even looking at this, that the 10% decline-ish for Bitcoin came in 4 minutes. It came in 4 1-minute candles. And that is not organic price action. What that speaks to is leverage being wiped out of the system. That speaks to a liquidation cascade, meaning everyone's got their stops, and as the price falls, it stops people out, drops the price, stops people out, drops the price. That is what we saw. And as Z has pointed out here, very interesting take. There's a good chance that this was Binance trying to defend BNB, their native exchange token. Binance had a BNB-backed loan that was due to be liquidated at $212, which was down from $220 after margin was added back in June. So it's quite possible that Binance wanted to defend his own token, his exchange token, and decided to sell Bitcoin for TUSD and buy the BNB. So this is similar to how a country would defend their own currency, right? Maybe he was just defending his own exchange currency. Maybe that's what this is. Apparently some people have done some on-chain looking at wallets and stuff like that. And it's quite possible that some of this was just dumping Bitcoin in order to prop up the BNB token. Whether or not this is true, the facts are the facts. And like I said, when you get 4 1-minute candles that drop the price of Bitcoin by 10% or more on some exchanges. That is by no means organic price action. That speaks to a liquidation cascade and is something that happens all the time in many, many asset classes. It's not unique to Bitcoin by any means. So I don't actually personally believe that Musk had anything to do with this. However, that does seem to be the narrative that has been fitted to this dip. So let's deal with this. Is it a store of value or not? Well, it absolutely is over the long term. Let me show you. Here are the price of eggs priced in Bitcoin. Over time, instead of saving in fiat currency, if you save in Bitcoin, eggs become essentially free. Absolutely not the case for saving in fiat currency, where, as you can see, the trend has been more or less up and to the right for eggs. And this is actually true of most commodities. So here I have sugar, gold, wheat, and corn priced in Bitcoin. And as you can see, over time, all of these commodities become essentially free. Holding Bitcoin for the long term is not only a store of value, but it increases your purchasing power. And this is even true against things like real estate. As you can see here, over time, houses become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper priced in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the only asset on the planet that can do this with absolutely any commodity or asset on Earth. So is it not yet a stable store of value in the short term? No, we have to agree there. But is it a store of value for the long term? Absolutely. And that is one of the main reasons I spend 50% of the time on this channel talking about Bitcoin. There's no other way to acquire real estate for so cheap than to dollar cost average into Bitcoin and hold it for the long term. Number two, Bitcoin is highly correlated with traditional markets when it comes to the downside. Again, I'm not entirely convinced that I agree here, bro. And the reason for that is, like I said, it's not really that Musk has caused this. It's not really that this is a correlated move. This is an inorganic move. This is a liquidation cascade that happened inside of 4 minutes. And I really don't think this is the case. Now, I do have to concede here slightly. There is certainly an illusion that I have mentioned and alluded to many, many times on this channel that the stock market and Bitcoin are correlated. But number one, Bitcoin is no longer correlated to US stocks, and the 90-day rolling average correlation between Bitcoin and the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 is at the lowest level observed since July of 2021. There are times when these assets are highly correlated, and there are times when they are not correlated at all. If you perform a statistical analysis over the entire data set for Bitcoin's history, you will find no statistically significant correlation exists between equities and Bitcoin. There have, however, been a set of conditions that are conducive to seeing Bitcoin break out to all-time highs, historically speaking. But again, I want to clear this up because I think this is a little bit muddled. So at the top here, I've got the Dow. I just ask you to ignore this little cluster of TA at the right and just pay attention to the horizontals in pink and the verticals in blue. So this is the Dow at the top, and this is Bitcoin at the bottom. We can see here that it takes the Dow breaking out to new all-time highs before Bitcoin can decide to break out to its new all-time highs. Then we get Bitcoin become way ahead of the performance. Bitcoin massively outperform the Dow, enter a bear market, whilst the Dow trades sideways for some time. And it takes the Dow breaking out again to new all-time highs before Bitcoin will make its way up to its new all-time high. Then we get this sort of sideways chop consolidation, and Bitcoin again bases, and it takes the Dow breaking out its all-time high for Bitcoin to indeed break out of its all-time high and get going. So when you look at this, I think the temptation is to say that we need the Dow to break to new all-time highs for Bitcoin to break to all-time highs. One cannot happen without the other. But again, I would make another argument here, and that is that it's not the halvings, it's not the Dow breaking out that drives Bitcoin's price to new all-time highs. It is liquidity. It is central bank balance sheet expansion that drives bull markets. When the Fed comes out and prints a bunch of money and uses that freshly printed money to accumulate assets and add it to its balance sheet, that is what drives the bull market. I did a whole presentation on this, and the video was called something along the lines of "It's not the halvings for Bitcoin." So check that video out if you haven't seen this already. If you have, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been making this argument consistently that I do not believe the halving is what drives bull markets. I've always believed it is a liquidity story. And that is one of the main reasons that I think we're going to continue to see Bitcoin price appreciation, because the only way to service the debt is with more printing, and more printing always finds its way into markets that are then added to the Fed balance sheet. So is it highly correlated? I'm not convinced. Like I said, I don't think this price action was organic, and I certainly don't think it was correlated to the stock market. Number three, Bitcoin can't rally against and sometimes with the market unless it's supported by fundamentals. I'm not entirely sure what you're alluding to here when you say fundamentals. I don't know if you mean macroeconomic environment or the fundamentals underneath Bitcoin, but the fundamentals underneath Bitcoin do nothing but improve. Hash rate continues to improve, adoption continues to go up, wallet addresses continue to accumulate, institutions continue to get closer and closer to making this a mainstream asset. If you mean the macro environment, then yes, macro environments are incredibly important. And as I said before, we need to see balance sheet expansion historically to see asset price appreciation. This has just been the way the world works, unfortunately. This is just how the system is designed. And another point to make here, which is really important, is that when you adjust all asset classes for inflation, i.e. when you divide the asset price instead of by dollars by the Fed balance sheet, what you'll find out is only two things have outperformed inflation. Even the S&P 500, whilst the prices in dollars have gone up, you have not actually been able to take those gains and buy more stuff with it because it has not outperformed inflation when you adjust it for the Fed balance sheet. The only two asset classes that have actually outperformed the Fed balance sheet expansion is Bitcoin and tech stocks. Those are the only two asset classes that if you held them, you will have increased your total net worth and your purchasing power after inflation and Fed balance sheet expansion adjustments. So I'm not entirely sure what you meant here, but like I said before, this is entirely a story of liquidity, and I still continue to believe this is entirely a story of liquidity. The crypto market is still very weak and hasn't recovered from 2022 crashes. Well, yes and no. I think the market is still quite weak. We have come down indeed from a high of 69,000 to a low of 15.6. So what is that, 77 odd % bear market decline? Yeah. Things take time. They don't typically fall 77% and then do this, do they? So I have to agree with this point. The market is still quite weak. Base building takes a long time. We usually have to do something like this for a while, even retest the lows and then go again. Now, if I'm right about this liquidity injection, if we are likely going to continue to see further upside, admittedly, we are getting to the point now where that is starting to look more and more unlikely. And to your point of it hasn't recovered from the 2022 crashes, again, it takes time to build bases, it takes time to recover. However, undeniably, from the low of 15.6 to the peak at 31, 32K, whatever it was, that was a 100% move off the lows. And even after this crash that we've had lately, if you want to label it crash, or liquidation cascade is the term I prefer, we're still up 70% year to date for the price of Bitcoin. So that's not bad. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, that is not bad at all. If the melt up was unlikely, I would now say it's impossible. Now, I kind of just alluded to that it's far less likely we're going to see it given the recent price action. However, if we're talking about a melt up in stocks, then we are absolutely, in my opinion, about to see that. So if I hop into my melt up chart as I've got here, I mean, how far from this high? We were a mere 4 or 5% away from the all-time high. Even now, we currently sit somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% away from the all-time high. I've been calling for this weekly cycle low flush and a quick reversal. Likely what comes next is the run of the all-time highs. And going back to the Dow, check out this with the Dow, right? We had this massive consolidation under here, breakout, retest right into this neighborhood. Breakout gives us a target of 38K. Now, what's super interesting about that is, as I showed you earlier, every time the Dow breaks out to new all-time highs, Bitcoin historically has done it. And whilst I don't think there's a direct correlation there, if this is indeed a set of conditions that needs to be met, then seeing the Dow rally a mere 7%, which we know it can do in very short order. Look here, for example, 42 days to rally 8.8%. I see no reason why we couldn't see an all-time high run for the Dow, and perhaps that could drag Bitcoin up with it. Of course, I still believe that this would have to be driven by increase in liquidity. Maybe that QE that identifies as a loan program, something like that. Maybe China has to print and then that forces more printing in stealth mode for the US. This will of course have to be driven by liquidity, but the technical setup is there. Breakout, retest, looking for that resumption to all-time highs. The measured move target from the lows to the top of this range extended up gives us around 38K for the Dow. So I still think there is more gas left in this goose. If we're talking about Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, is the likelihood of us seeing that vastly decreased given the recent price action? Well, yes and no. On the one hand, when I look at this fractal chart, is this starting to deviate away? Yes. But is it also possible that we could still recover? I would think there's a chance. Is it less likely, as you say? Then yeah, I would say so. It probably, I don't know if it's almost impossible, but it's certainly very less likely than it was. However, there is one pattern that we could see save us, and that is the Dalai Lama pattern. If you're unfamiliar with the Dalai Lama pattern, here it is. I don't know if the quality of that is terrible. So let's go again from here. The Dalai Lama pattern is essentially a mu symbol for those of you that know your Greek alphabet. There it is right there. So could we see this form a mu pattern, something like this, and then crack on? Yes, I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility, particularly because we are expecting to see cycle lows for the S&P 500. I'm going to get to the charts. I'm going to save this bit, but all we have to do is do what we usually do and obey cycles. Okay, as long as we can do that, there is a good chance we're going to rally out of here, break out. Camel's going to get long S&P, NASDAQ, Dow, as I've been telling you I will for weeks. And you know the targets, right? The targets are new all-time highs for the markets across the board, like this red squiggle and this yellow squiggle suggests. And are we finally going to get the last portion, the blow-off top portion of this melt-up before we have to start entertaining credit events? So the stars to me seem aligned. Whilst the Bitcoin price action is pretty nasty, whilst I was not expecting to see that, the facts are the facts. We're still above the prior cycle low for Bitcoin. We are still above the yellow range breakout right here. So inverse head and shoulders, bottom formation, yellow line is the line in the sand. All the while we're above that and the prior cycle low. Bullish structure is still intact. Now, admittedly, lose this yellow support and I will be exiting positions, particularly those crypto related equities, and looking to go to a plan B type strategy, something like this, into the halving and then see what we can get from there. But for now, all the while we're above this, okay, then we have left behind a bottom. That's just how it works. So unlikely, possibly, impossible, certainly not. You don't see a V-shaped recovery. Today was typical performance when Bitcoin is dragged down by the markets. Again, respectfully, brother, I have to disagree that it was dragged down by the markets. And if you do believe this, then the markets are due to turn around next week. So perhaps it's not an issue. Of course, I would love to hear back from you. And whilst you say you don't see a V-shaped recovery, neither do I. But that Dalai Lama pattern is something that Bitcoin undergoes quite a lot. So I wonder if we'll see that. As always, we'll take it one day at a time. We'll continue to see a few more candles and we'll see what the market will give. I am very optimistic about the stock market though. And as I've already shown you, if the stock market is going to challenge the all-time high, are we going to be able to draw yet another one of these and another one of these and then one more of these vertical ones? And are we going to see the Dow break out to its new all-time highs whilst Bitcoin does something like this? Is that coming? I don't know. But all the signs to me don't look too bad. As ever, let me know in the comments what you think. I'd love to hear from any one of you, so long as it's not a 9K is coming type of call. So moving into traditional finance and of course the charts ready for the week ahead, we have been harping on about this on this channel for weeks now. And finally, I think we're in the neighborhood. We've done this, haven't we? We've done this. We're now in this neighborhood. Is it time to get a reversal? Are we about to confirm it with a trend line breakout? Are you going to see me get long across the board for Bitcoin, for the NASDAQ, the S&P and the Dow, as I've been saying over and over again? And most importantly, are we going to see the dollar do what it did last time? Notice here, 5-week left translated high, followed by a declining phase for the dollar. Are we now about to get 5? We're already on 5. Are we going to get 6 or 7 followed by a declining phase into that 3-year cycle low for the dollar? Now, of course, if we were to do something like this next week, top and roll over, that will line up absolutely perfectly with the stock market finding its cycle low early next week and then coming out of here swinging. Now, of course, if the dollar really is going to top as the stock market finds a bottom, then we are going to see risk come on. That's just how this works. The 3-year cycle low is due all the way out into early 2024. There is plenty of downside space to finally reach my target of the mid-90s, around 95 for the Dixie that I've been calling for since all the way back here. I've had a pretty good handle on the dollar read, apart from this late move right here. I've been completely caught offside by this. I wasn't really expecting this, which is silly with hindsight, because with hindsight, I knew this was coming and I was talking about this very consistently. I think I did mention 1 or 2 times that we might see the dollar catch a little bit of a bid as the stock market is sold off for dollars in the short term, but I wasn't really expecting it to pressure Bitcoin. I wasn't expecting it to pressure the gold and silver as much as this, and I certainly wasn't expecting to see it come as high as we are now. But we are currently in this sort of a situation. So is it going to roll over? Is it going to create a little bull trap and then roll over? The cycles tell us to be open to downside. Of course, as I said, the cycles for the stock market tell us to be open to upside. So the stars to me seem to be aligned to see some kind of rollover and a trend down towards the mid-90s. Bob has it, I noticed, just around 90. I think 95, and I'll declare victory on this move. At the same time, under the hood, things aren't too bad. They're not as bearish as people think it is. So more than 80% of the S&P 500 companies have reported so far have beaten profit expectations, but the returns are setting up to be one of the worst earnings seasons over the last 11 years. There's divergence here. Companies are beating expectations, but the performance is not yet reflected in the S&P 500 index price. So again, tells us to be open to seeing higher prices in the not too distant future. I also wanted to point this out. If I hop back over here, what have you heard me say over and over and over again regarding this decline? I've been saying the primary function and purpose of a weekly cycle decline is to what? Is to flush the sentiment, is to reset the sentiment. And have a look at this. We went from extreme greed all the way to fear. And the most recent reading is sub 42, I believe. So we have indeed flushed the sentiment. We can tick this one off. That's exactly what the weekly cycle low is supposed to do. Reset the sentiment, make everyone bearish. In fact, you've probably seen that video I put out that was talking about how we need to be psychologically prepared for all the doom posting that's going to be coming out of here. And that's exactly what we've been seeing. So we've officially reset the sentiment. We're now back in fear territory. And that means that whilst everyone is betting on downside, and we've also seen the record in put spikes, remember, I showed that record amounts of puts are being bought as people try to short this market at the bottom. Again, all of these things point to us being able to come out of here swinging and make a cycle low in the not too distant future. It's of course Bitcoin sentiment as well as the stock market that has been soured. Crypto Zombie here put out a very, very nice summary. He said, look, he's not going to call out any names, but there's a lot of accounts, some with big influence, that have been bearish since sub 16k, convincing their followers it's best to sit in cash, and the whole thing was just a bull trap. But a 106% move off the lows is not a bull trap, and now they're sitting here screaming, I told you so. Meanwhile, their followers have missed the entire move, so did they. I'm also seeing this in the stock market. As I pointed out in my psychologically preparing for what's to come video, we have been seeing people post 2008 fractals here, then say, no, bull trap, Michael Burry said sell, then say, biggest bull trap I've ever seen, and I told you so. And what I said in that was to come afterwards, if we were to rally out of here, was these people will very quickly become the double top gang, right? So people are declaring victory the whole way up. However, the facts are the facts. Unless you've been long since this neighborhood in here, then you've missed the entire move and you've been on the wrong side. Remember, a broken clock is right twice a day. That doesn't make it a good clock. And this is quite possibly a normal, healthy correction. Could we go lower? Of course, but I still maintain the bottom has been in for a while and remain bullish mid to long term. At the end of the day, don't let these so-called gurus or influencers affect your emotions and decisions, and this includes me as well. So again, sentiment has likely been reset, and here is the bear logic from Kevin Svensson. Look, Bitcoin will go to 10k. Like I said, 10k soon. Yeah, almost there. See? Told you so. I mean, how many more times are we going to do this? And the last piece of news before we get into the charts is that the Grayscale SEC lawsuit converting its fund to a spot Bitcoin ETF has officially had no decision, i.e. they've delayed it again, and that cannot really be a surprise to anyone at this point. So as I get into the charts now, I'm realizing we've kind of done half of them already, but that's not really a problem. You know the deal, right? Melt up still seems to be in play. This has been the expectation, so all we can do is continue to trade what's in front of us, continue to say, well, we thought this would happen, now it's happened, what am I supposed to do? Change my stance, become bearish, start short in the bottom? No. So all I can do is say, here's the chart, here's the expectation, I'll be looking for swings, and swings confirmed by a break of this downward sloping red resistance line will see me get back in long again for the S&P 500. I expect this to happen as early as Tuesday, as late as Thursday or Friday. So this week, expect me to be going long. Of course, I will update you as I always do. The same is true of the NASDAQ. We break out of this and I'll be getting long and then watching for the blue one above it. So again, I'm expecting to see swings. I'm expecting to see reversals. Could we go a little bit lower and touch this support? Maybe. But as soon as we break out, I'm going to be respecting that. The long's probably going to look something like this, and we'll see what the market can give. The Dow, kind of already covered this, haven't I? So breakout, retest, looking for that resumption. Can we run the all-time high? I think so. Technical target at 38. If we can break out this downward sloping red resistance line, that will be a long from me. Again, it should be no surprise to you whatsoever. I'm also thinking about shorting the VIX. This is a bit of a weird trade. If I can get a pop up on the VIX on Monday, I'm going to be looking for intraday reversals and then seeing if I can short the VIX back down to the range lows. So this is just a trade idea. This is experts only. I know most of you probably won't even really have access to the VIX, but this is just a trade setup. I'm looking to get in. I will perhaps, if I see an intraday spike on Monday, be looking to do this. Any kind of gap down, and I think the stop's going to end up being too wide. It's quite an expensive instrument for me to trade. So we'll see how that goes, but this is just an idea for now at least. Gold, I think, is building or working on a monster rally, but of course it needs to see the Dixie top. So are we going to see the dollar top this week? Quite possibly. Could it take a week longer? Either way, when it does, I do expect to see fireworks for gold and for silver. Silver, I'm still in, as you can see. So long as strong continue to push, all the while we're in, we'll keep pushing the trade. And the miners I'm still thinking about adding to, as I've been saying over and over again, but we do really need to see the dollar top before that can get going. Bitcoin, is this the start of the end? Is this going to work our way down here, lose this support, and then we're going all the way back to the lows? Maybe. Or are we about to Dalai Lama out of here, as I've shown you? Such a stupid name. And in all seriousness, all the while we're above this yellow range breakout, then it's my job to remain bullish. So I'm still looking for swings. We are in the timing window to see this turn into a day 65 cycle low, but it has got to do that immediately. All the while we're above the yellow support, then, like I said, we have indeed got a inverse head and shoulders, a range breakout, and we have indeed flipped the bottom into support. So all the while we're above that, I continue to be bullish, lose that, and I will officially flip bearish on Bitcoin in the short term. And the crypto-related equities, we'll see if these can break out with the stock market. If they can, then that's a nice trade for Coinbase. The same is true of MicroStrategy. We've got an early entry in this pink line or a later, more safer entry on the red. Either way, if we can start to break out, particularly if we can hold the top of this range break, it's the same for Bitcoin, isn't it? All the while we're above the top of this range break, then we have flipped the bottom into support and we'll be looking for higher prices. Lose this, along with Bitcoin losing its 25K range. And we have to pivot our stance and say, we're going to have to wait to be able to do this all over again. At some point, a parabola will evolve and will show up for Bitcoin and all of these crypto-related equities. Hopefully, this is sooner rather than later, but it doesn't really matter, does it? What matters is that we don't get too wrecked on the way. It's the same deal with Riot. So we've still got the first two positions, just about hanging on to the second one. If we can indeed get a range breakout, a trade breakout here, a downward sloping pink resistance line, we'll add there, and perhaps even one more time on the downward sloping red resistance line. We're still above the uptrend. We're still above the horizontal blue, the range breakout. And all the while we're above those levels, we just have to remain bullish. It is what it is. Marathon, right back into support. So again, if we can get a reversal, it's probably going to come from lower down now. Something like this and a breakout. We'll add one more position and we'll see what the market can give. If Bitcoin really is going to Dalai Lama its way out of here, then we will be seeing much higher prices for the crypto-related equities. Quick message to the members. All of those stocks, I think I already mentioned this in the community tab. All of those stocks are, if we are indeed going to find the cycle lows, I think they're going to break out this week, over the next week, maybe the next 2 weeks. So the ones that break out first, we'll expect the strongest performance from. Of course, I will update you as and when I take those positions. For everyone else, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I've got a feeling it's going to be a pretty long one. So if you made it this far, I love you a lot and enjoy the rest of your weekend. In the meantime, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.